Hello and welcome to Opt to Thrive, episode 49, Aging Gracefully, the identity shifts no one prepares you for.
Welcome to Opt to Thrive, your go-to podcast for women's wellness in midlife, designed to educate, support, and inspire you to live your very best life. And now your host, Dr. Karina Sims.
Hello. Well, it has been a very, very hot summer. Looking out there, out the sunroom window, there's a lot of brown. Maybe not a lot of brown. There's a bit of brown. We have kept up the watering for the most part, but some of the trees are struggling a little bit. We've had runs of, 45-degree days, 40 plus anyway. And it's been warm. I'm not going to complain though, because I absolutely love being warm. Maybe not that warm, but I love being warm and I'm going to miss it when it's no longer warm. So I am not going to complain. I have had an emotional couple of weeks. My daughter came home for a visit. If you listened to the last podcast, you got a little insight into some of the dramas that came up. But for the most part, it was a great visit. It was so good having them both here and spending time with them in a way that I don't get to do very often anymore. And so loving that, and I'm hoping that Meg may find her way back to Australia in the next couple of years. Keep my fingers crossed. So today we're talking about identity shifts in midlife. In particular, the shift from being a young woman to now a middle-aged woman. In my youth, I remember saying I wanted to age gracefully, and I had a pretty good idea of what I thought that might look like. Now, back then, there wasn't Botox and fillers and all the things that are so accessible and visible as they are now. So then I got here to this stage of life where I was starting to feel and see the effects of aging, and I found that aging gracefully wasn't as easy as I once thought that it might be. And that aging gracefully could be interpreted many different ways. When I was doing some research for this episode, I found threads from women of all different ages and colors and cultures, and it was really fascinating to see the differences in how some of us feel about this particular identity shift. It appears that most of us are going to have at least a little bit of a challenge here, and some maybe not so much. Some of us can make this transition pretty easily, and others are at the other end of the spectrum and can in fact start grieving their youth as young as 30. I myself don't think I started really noticing aging too much until I was in my early 40s, and probably noticing the effects of aging much more around the age of 50. I am now 55. It appears that women who have strongly identified with their looks throughout their life seem to have the hardest time in making the shift, which makes a lot of sense. I remember having a patient who came to see me several years ago now, a patient I have never forgotten. She was in her 50s and she was really suffering. She was a woman whose identity was very strongly tied to how she looked, and she was really struggling with the aging process and what she was starting to see in the mirror. The memory stands out because though I wasn't at the same life stage as her at the time, I could identify with her pain. I could see where she was coming from. We talked for a while. I did a fair bit of listening. I really wasn't quite sure what to say. And eventually I offered to refer her to get some counseling to help her process what sounded very much to me like grief. She took the referral, though she didn't seem overly interested in following through with it. And with puffy eyes from crying and her shoulders slumped, she left my office and I never saw her again. Over the years, as I have found myself navigating the aging process, I have often thought about her and I've wondered how she went. Did she become bitter and angry and resentful? Did she hide herself away and become perpetually sad and withdrawn? Or did she eventually embrace her new identity as an older woman and find peace? This topic is something that I don't hear many women talk about, especially in Australia, because in Australia, you absolutely do not want to be accused of being fig jam. No one likes the tall poppy, especially if you know you're a tall poppy. Okay, for my listeners not familiar with Australian colloquialisms, fig jam stands for I'm good, and the tall poppy may not be particularly Aussie, but I hadn't heard it before coming here, and it just means you stand out above the crowd. So then, who's going to go around telling anyone other than her GP she's mourning the loss of turning a head or two, of getting stopped by a traffic cop, batting an eyelash, and getting off with a warning, or getting extra special attention when dropping her car in for a service? I think many women are embarrassed and ashamed to be feeling this way, and so they keep it to themselves and suffer in silence. In my reading, I found a term I had never heard before. There's actually something called the Invisible Woman Syndrome. It's not a real diagnosis, but it's how many women describe a subtle shift as they age, where they can start to feel less seen, less heard, or less noticed in everyday life. So it is a thing, and I have had women say this to me, that they feel invisible. So as vulnerable as this conversation might be, I am going to have it today, and I'm going to do my very best to offer what I can to help those of you who may be right there in the thick of making this transition yourself and may be looking for a little advice and direction. Another reason for doing this podcast today is that I think one of the reasons midlife can be so difficult to navigate is because we are challenged with so many identity shifts, not just with how we look, but with our roles in our families and in our work and in society in general as well. Maybe you're at the peak of your career. Now what? You were the woman who was working towards this goal, an ambitious, career-driven woman. If you've made it and now you're here just sailing along, now who are you? You no longer have children at home. Now what? You may have been the loving or frantic or organized mother whose main priority was caring for her children. Or maybe your career was raising your children and running a household. You were the woman who organized everyone and everything. If you're not that person anymore, then who are you? As a couple who raised a family, you had roles. He had roles. And now the kids are gone, and now you're a wife at home alone with her partner. What does that look like? Maybe you were the daughter being cared for by your parents as they helped with the kids and emotional support, but now roles have changed, and now you're their carer. I myself am no longer the woman that used to get accused of looking too young to be a doctor. Now people assume, based on my smile and my frown lines, that I must have a lot of experience. So I am the seasoned one, the experienced one, maybe the wise one. Am I yet a matriarch? Not so sure about that. That sounds a little intimidating. Maybe not just yet, but I think that's where I'm headed. Our roles are evolving, and there is no guidebook to help us manage these transitions. What I'm hoping to offer today is a little insight into how I've managed some of my own identity shifts and how I've seen some of my patients manage them and how I would like to manage them, which is sometimes in stark contrast to how I am actually managing them. For me, by far, and a little embarrassing to admit, the hardest transition has probably been in the physical and aesthetic effects of aging. But when I look at why this was for me, it makes a lot of sense, and it allows me to give myself a bit of grace and compassion. From as early as I can remember, I have received compliments on how I look. So much so that how I looked became a strong identity for me. For my first 29 years of life in America, the norm was being catcalled and hit on at the petrol station or in the grocery store, or even once on the highway a man was indicating for me to pull over. And once I was followed while driving home from work, and a phone number was left on my car when I quickly dashed into a pharmacy to seek safety. I'd like to say that that was a long time ago and maybe things have changed. But my daughter had a similar experience in recent times when she stayed a few days in Venice Beach, California. She was traveling by herself and she rang me from her hotel room a little angry and a little scared, saying that every time she left her room, she was catcalled and openly complimented on her looks. She couldn't understand how men she didn't know thought it was okay to talk to her at all, let alone talk to her like that. It was really unsettling for her, having been raised in Australia where this just does not happen. In fact, when I moved to Australia at the age of 29, I wondered initially if maybe I had all of a sudden become unattractive because the kind of attention that was part of life for me growing up just did not happen here. So growing up like that definitely contributed to my strong identification with how I looked. This, and of course, I'm sure how society values youth and beauty played into it as well. And then the wrinkles and the pigmentation and the drooping started to occur, and I have found it a very interesting challenge to navigate. I can't say I'm always totally at ease and happy with the changes, and maybe there's still a bit of work in progress, but I have managed to come to a degree of acceptance. I practice acceptance and I acknowledge my choices. I could choose to have cosmetic procedures if I wanted to, or I could choose not to. Regardless, the hands of time are going to tick along, and there's absolutely nothing I can do about that. I suspect that one day I'll move from practicing acceptance to fully accepting. But for now, I'll continue to work on it. Apart from acceptance, one of the biggest things that has helped the most is adopting a new identity. I now identify with being strong. I am a strong woman. I absolutely love feeling strong. I love watching my body transform as I build muscle. The body that always seemed out of reach to me in all the years before seems much more accessible to me now. When I see the muscles in my thighs as they work against the weight I'm pushing, or some definition in my shoulders in the mirror when I'm drying my hair, it gives me a little burst of joy. I can still create change. I can still improve myself, but I now appreciate it so much more than just for aesthetics. I haven't had to work at that. That has become a natural side effect of the strength training, and a carry-on effect is wanting to fuel my body with what it needs to build muscle and to function well. Those are things that were just not priorities in my youth. If you look up the evidence for interventions for preserving youth and function, resistance training is at the top of the list. That and good nutrition, high protein and high fiber. This is one of the many reasons I promote resistance training so much. Despite my aging face, I'm not sure I have ever felt as confident and secure in myself as I do now. Resistance training, ladies, it really is the golden ticket. I am very much focused on being the best me that I can be at any age, and feeling the best that I can feel. This mindset alone has been really instrumental in keeping me from getting stuck. Another thing that's really helped is having these projects that fill my cup, that feed my soul. This podcast, the Reset program, and the free content I provide online. Part of that is being able to use my creativity, and another part is in the giving to and supporting of others in a way that feels really fulfilling to me. And the science backs this up. The research tells us that helping others strengthens connection, builds a sense of purpose, and increases our psychological well-being. The caveat here, though, is to balance the giving. Some of you are giving way too much to others and not keeping enough for yourself. This is your reminder that you are a much better everything. Friend, wife, mother, daughter, worker, whatever, if you make your self-care a priority and then care for others. Another thing that has helped me along the way is role models. I have one in particular. She's a patient who's somewhere around 10 to 15 years older than I am, and to me, she is the epitome of aging gracefully. She's fit and dresses well and is just really well put together. She wears minimal makeup, and every line and crease you would expect to see on her face at her age is right there to see without any sense of shame or trying to cover it up. Her eyes are bright and shiny, and her inner beauty radiates from inside her. She looks you right in the eye when she talks. She smiles and laughs a lot, but she's serious when she needs to be. She walks with a sense of belonging and confidence and purpose. And when I see her doing this aging thing so well in a way that I admire and respect, it reminds me that this is available to me too. It's a lot less scary when we can see women ahead of us doing so well the thing that we want to do too. Having some really honest and vulnerable conversations with my husband about how I'm feeling has also been really helpful, as well as checking in with how he's going. Long-term relationships can get comfortable sometimes, and maybe too comfortable in a way that may lead to insecurity. There have been times, for instance, that I've wondered if I had my shirt inside out or dirt down the side of my face, would he even notice? So checking in and reconnecting, hearing and being heard have also gone a long way. Now, in my reading, I found lots of bits of advice from varying sources. Some were psychologists and some were women who have gone through it all themselves. Some of it was a bit airy-fairy and would have had that struggling patient I talked about before, rolling her eyes and wishing she'd never mentioned it to me. But some things I thought were worth passing along. I've made a list of 5 more things I thought could be useful. 1. Avoiding comparing yourself to others. This has been a general rule of mine for many years. Whenever I'm tempted to do it, I remind myself that comparison is the thief of joy. There is no upside, Karina. Stop it. Number 2, looking after yourself well. Good skincare, nutrition, and exercise, all things that promote healthy aging and physical and psychological well-being. Number 3, wearing clothes that you feel good in. That just makes sense. Number 4, acknowledge your feelings. They are all valid. And remember what the shame researcher Brene Brown tells us, shame cannot survive sharing. So having this discussion with someone you trust to be kind with your feelings can help too. And finally, number 5, embrace all the qualities that make you unique and special. Too many of us pay much more attention to the things that we're not doing so well or the things we don't like about ourselves as if they cancel out all the good things. Let's flip that on its head. If your inner voice starts to say something negative, practice immediately looking for a positive quality to focus on. And make an agreement to stop the negative self-talk. There is no upside to negative self-talk. I think the bottom line is that we all just have to find our way, and part of that for some of us will be having to grieve what feels like a loss and come to some kind of acceptance. I have no judgment for women who dabble in cosmetic procedures and treatments. I look at people who've managed to do this what I think is well, like Nicole Kidman. I don't know what all she's had done, but I can certainly admire the craftsmanship in the work that she has had, and I think it looks reasonably natural. My husband, on the other hand, complains every time he sees her. And then I see others who I think have just gone a little bit too far. They don't look anything like themselves anymore, and some really don't even really look quite human, like ghouls. And I feel for them that they've been so unhappy that they've pushed things so far. My hope is that by having this conversation openly, that women will appreciate they aren't alone in this. Some of us may make these transitions smoothly, but there's a lot of us who are kind of just fumbling our way through it, working out what works for us. I think about my grandmothers navigating the shift from being young and dewy-faced to older and not so dewy-faced. One of my grandmothers was vibrant and beautiful from the inside out until the day she died at 93 years old. In her youth, she was a stunning woman, and she loved telling the stories of going out dancing, and she described the dresses she'd wear and the attention she would get and the fun she would have, and she told these stories with a huge smile on her face and a twinkle in her eye. The other grandmother was bitter and angry and jealous and miserable. She didn't like my mother, and she didn't like me. I was no stranger to comments about me wanting to be a cheerleader just to show off my bum to the football players, or being publicly accused of having large breasts like I made them that big on purpose just to get attention. I know which one I want to be, but truthfully, as I find my way, I have seen a little bit of both inside myself along the journey. But what I want is this: to appreciate, not envy, to lift up, not put down, and to be the very best me that I can be, whatever that looks like, and be totally at peace with that. I hope the same for you, my friends. I hope that has resonated with some of you, and if it has, I would love to hear some feedback about how you're navigating this stage of life and what you thought of the podcast today. And if you haven't rated and reviewed the podcast, please take a second to do that, and subscribe if you haven't as well. Have a great week, everyone, and until then, I hope you opt to thrive. Hey, before you go, if you're a midlife woman who wants to feel better in your body, whether that means improving your health, building strength and confidence, or working towards weight change in a kinder, more sustainable way, I have created something especially for you to support you. It's called the Midlife Health and Body Reset Kickstart Guide, and it's a free 7-day foundations guide to help you understand what's going on in your body in midlife and what actually makes a difference from here. You can download it using the link in the show notes. And if you're ready to take things even a step further and you'd like personalized support, you're welcome to join me inside the Midlife Reset. It's my coaching program for midlife women who want clarity, accountability, and compassionate guidance as they build strength, improve their health, and create real lasting change. I'm now running monthly intake cycles, which means there's a supported onboarding start date each month, so you don't have to wait for a big launch, and you can begin when the timing feels right for you with guidance from day one. You'll find a link in the show notes to get you all the details, and if you're not sure whether it's the right fit, you're always welcome to reach out and ask me any questions. We can even book a little discovery call where we find out if we're a good fit and if it's the right program for you. Just send me a message. Thanks so much for listening and for being here.
The Opt to Thrive podcast is designed for information purposes only and is not engaged in the giving of medical advice. The information provided on the podcast should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. In no way should the information provided by Opt to Thrive be considered medical advice, and at all times the advice of a medical professional should supersede recommendations from Opt to Thrive. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. The views expressed in this podcast are purely that of Dr. Sims and do not in any way reflect those of the institutions she contracts her medical services to.
Thank you for listening to Opt to Thrive. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate and share the podcast. You can visit our website at opttothrive.com and leave a comment for any subjects you would like to hear more about.